Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu's Ranker. On this episode we're going to be continuing our albums of the year list. This time it's 2006, and yeah, the 2000s are absolutely on a roll because 2006 is another great year, plenty of depth, plenty of great records. So without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are my personal top 10 albums from 2006. So we're going to be kicking off this list with Vision Valley by The Vines, which was the band's third album. And yeah, this one's a bit of an odd one because the band's previous album, Winning Days, took a lot of critical flack for being a retread of their debut. As I said on my 2004 list, I don't agree with that. I think it's more of a refining or perfecting of the formula rather than a retread. This album though is a straight retread of that second album. However, this time it got a pass from the critics and was even showered with praise. The why is undoubtedly because frontman Craig Nichols had been diagnosed with Asperger's, which explained why he was acting like such a tool. To that end, I should probably apologise to him for labelling him a dickhead and a tool on the previous list, but, I'm not going to. Anyway, instead of being regarded as a retread, this record was generally lauded as a broken band picking up the pieces after a mental health emergency. And new for this record is the reliance on insane brevity. Everything is squeezed into a 2 or 2.5 minute format that really limits ambition and depth, but does make for a very catchy, easy to listen to and snappy overview of what the Vines are. And although there's nothing particularly new on this record, everything is super melodic, alternating between blissed out psychedelia, snarling grunge and glistening summer pop. It's just a really solid album and I played the absolute bejesus out of it when it was new. That said, after this release, things hit the skids pretty hard for the Vines, as the next couple of albums set about retreading this album, almost completely forsaking innovation or the atmosphere building of their best work, at which point it really does start to sound like a copy of a copy of a copy, which is the point where I personally got off the Vines train. But this album is still great and represents one last hurrah in regards for their tenure on these lists. Next up, we have Alright Still, which was the debut album by working class pop minx Lily Allen. Lily rose to fame via posting her home recordings on MySpace, which was very much a flourishing thing at this point in time. She was signed and her debut single Smile went straight to the #1 spot in UK charts. And yet, this record fuses elements of hip-hop, ska, dub, reggae and pop to very good effect. The tunes are bright and peppy, but often are subverted by Allen's wry lyricism. She's actually a really good lyricist, and the way she captured working class youth on this record really reminds me of what Pulp did on A Different Class. Highlights on this include the smash hit Smile, the upbeat reggae infused LDN, and the bubblegum pop closer Alfie. And yeah, 2006 also marked a shift in female-led acts. For a long while, the fairer sex have been bogged down in girl groups, tasteless company-manufactured R&B, or trying to endlessly replicate Avril Lavigne, but this year we had the fresh young voices of Lily Allen and Amy Winehouse breaking into the mainstream with different sounds. And speaking of Amy Winehouse, her album Back to Black just missed this list, but that's pretty great too. So yeah, It's Alright is a great debut and an easy placing on this list. Coming in next, we have Voices of Animals and Men, which was the debut album by the Young Knives, who after this dropped the prefix from their name and simply became Young Knives. Signed to the ultra cool indie label Transgressive, the Young Knives are from that stuttering school of angular indie that birthed bands like Franz Ferdinand, The Future Heads and Block Party. Unlike the previous entry, this album is very much a middle-class kind of affair, obsessed with the countryside, tailors, gainful employment, and the pursuit of cash. To that end, I always felt that there was an element of the Divine Comedy in this band, if not in style, then in spirit. This album is consistent from start to finish, and every song has its own little hook or delight. Standouts include The Decision, with its smooth indie glide and references to the New Forest, which I used to live near back in England. Minor hits Here Comes the Rumour Mill and She's Attracted To are pristine catchy singles. The latter always makes me go into karaoke mode with the refrain, "You were screaming at your mama and I was punching your dad. You were screaming at your mama and I was punching your dad." Yeah, that's just great fun. Coast Guard, an album highlight, Loughborough Suicide brings some darkness and emotion to the back end of the record. So yeah, Voices of Animals and Men is a fantastic indie record and one I recommend heartily. Next up, we have A Matter of Life or Death by Iron Maiden, which was the band's concept album about war. If Iron Maiden making a concept album about war doesn't excite your blood, then I don't know what to tell you. Get a blood transfusion maybe? But yeah, this is definitely the best late period Iron Maiden album for me. New for this one is a slick modern production, which is something the band rarely play with. The record doesn't sound like an updated version of what they did in the 80s. It sounds contemporary, and like they're actually reaching out for new ground here. It's also a good bit darker than most Maiden albums, which fits its themes well, and yet the album is incredibly consistent and even manages to earn its bloated runtime of 1 hour and 12 minutes. Huge highlights include the patriotic These Colours Don't Run, the mid-album banger Out of the Shadows, the obfuscating guitar riffs of For the Greater Good of God, and my personal favourite, the epically dark The Reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg. Man, I just love that track's build-up and the instrumental break. Chef's kiss, guitar work to fall down on your knees and pray to the rock gods for. So yeah, amazing late period stuff from Iron Maiden here. Yeah, you did in fact just see that. We just transitioned from Iron Maiden to Belle Sebastian, and now you've officially seen everything. Your life is complete, and now you have my permission to die. No, please don't, because I need the subscribers. Anyway, next up we have The Life Pursuit from Belle Sebastian. On this album, the band are skewing hard towards the 70s, much more than ever before. And yet, the production on this record is absolutely delightful and feels like a loving replica of that typical 70s sound. And there's also a good amount of variety on offer here, and plenty of earworms, hooks and highlights, some of which include the typically autopilot glide of Another Sunny Day and Funny Little Frog, the 70s electro keys of White Collar Boy and Song for Sunshine, the psychedelia of We Are the Sleepyheads, the beautiful piano ballad Dress Up On You, and my favourite off of this is Suki in the Graveyard, which is just an absolute banger with its punk pace, 70s organ and awesome bluesy guitar solo. So yeah, stuffed full of memorable tunes and great lyrics, The Life Pursuit is another success for Belle Sebastian that saw the band at the height of their chart powers. Great stuff. So, we're going to be kicking off the top 5 with The Black Parade by American emo band My Chemical Romance, which was the band's third album. And in the most emo move ever, this is actually a concept album about death. There's a loose narrative running through the album about a guy who dies from cancer and enters the afterlife, whereupon he ruminates upon love and loss and the memories from his life. As you can imagine, the album has a general gloomy atmosphere, yet is characterized by giant skyscraping choruses and headbanging pop-punk guitars. The album has an almost kind of rock opera feel to it. This is emo just pushed out to the very edge of the envelope and is as epic as you could possibly go with the genre. As such, it's arguably the peak of the genre, acting as the jewel in its crown. Highlights on a very consistent LP include the crunching guitars of Sleep, the wistful single Teenagers, and the balladeering I Don't Love You, but of course the ultimate highlight is the semi-title track Welcome to the Black Parade, which is basically the emo Bohemian Rhapsody. Building up from an immediately hooky, ghostly piano line, the song explodes into a rocking celebration of everything good about the genre, featuring lots of Queen-esque nods in both the vocals and the guitar work. It's just a really impressive track and the perfect peak for a classic genre-defining album. Next up, we have Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, which was the extremely long-winded title of the debut album by Arctic Monkeys. Much like Lily Allen, the Arctic Monkeys got their break by putting up their home recordings on MySpace, and also, likewise, their debut single, I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, hit number 1 on the UK pop chart, and is also excellent with its wiry guitars and jerking nature, coming off like a sister song to Franz Ferdinand's Take Me Out. Yeah, and this band owes more than a passing nod to Franz Ferdinand in general, as they rarely stray from the template that band set down. That said, I do prefer the Arctic Monkeys, so we have another Travis / Coldplay situation here, with the Monkeys coming later but totally stealing Ferdinand's thunder. One of the reasons is Alex Turner's lyrics. He's just a great lyricist, and much like Lily Allen, his snapshot of working class life, in this case boys being out in the pool and having a few, feels genuine, and again reminds me of what Pulp achieved with Different Class. The track listing is consistent, and other highlights include When the Sun Goes Down, which delves into Sheffield's likely terrifying red light district. I mean, I went to Sheffield once. I didn't stray far from the city centre, but still I felt like I needed to be wrapped up in a stab-proof jacket 24/7. The restrained riot van always elicits a chuckle, and Red Light Indicates Doors Are Secure is a cool stream of consciousness song from the back of a taxi on your way home after a night out on the pool. So yeah, the Arctic Monkeys debut album is pretty damn great and an easy placing on this list. Coming in third place and taking home the bronze medal, we have The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me, which was the third album by Brand New. Prior to this, Brand New had been poodling along nicely. The debut, Your Favourite Weapon, was a good genre example of skate punk, whilst the follow-up, Deja Entendu, had a more kind of Anglo Britpop vibe to it. But on this album, the band completely bury their head in their hands and turn the misery up to 11 with an intoxicating mix of post-punk, art rock and metal. And yeah, this record has some heavy-duty critical wallop behind it, with some dubbing it the OK Computer of art rock / metal crossovers, and it's just easy to see why. It resides right in the center point between those genres and offers something for everyone. Experimental moments like Welcome to Bangkok, Untitled, or the beautiful Radiohead-esque ballad Jesus Christ satisfied the art rock crowd. The creeping darkness of Limousine or Closer Handcuffs are bound to appeal to post-punk fans, the latter with twisted suicidal lyrics like, I'd drown all these crying babies if I knew that their mothers wouldn't cry. I'd hold them down and I'd squeeze real soft just to let a piece of myself die. Yeah, it's just post-punk gold, while tracks like the brutal album highlights De Gorza or You Won't Know are as heavy as it gets and make you want to scream and mosh around until your neighbours file a cease and desist order. So yeah, this is just a masterful album by Brand New, and if you've not heard this one, just drop what you're doing and check it out immediately because it is awesome. Silver medal time, and the silver medal is going to go to Sam's Town, which was the sophomore effort from The Killers. As I'm sure you know, I'm a huge Smith / Morrissey fan, but boy am I glad that The Killers dropped the whole Morrissey shtick, because this band are absolutely at their best when they're looking at their own culture, and that's exactly what's happening here. This album sounds like it just rode in from the Las Vegas desert. It's chock full of Dashed Dreams, Trailer Park Blues, and crucially, absolutely banging tunes. The album is consistent from start to finish, and there's not a weak moment in sight. There's also an atmospheric American carnival element to this album, with the early interlude and the closing exitlude inviting you in and waving you goodbye, and tons of highlights too, some of which include the rawhide infused Bling, Confessions of a King, the Trailer Park classics For Reasons Unknown and Uncle Johnny, the towering Americana ballad Read My Mind, and the stadium ready My List and Why Do I Keep Counting. My favourite off this though is a tie between the singles When You Were Young and Bones. I love the way the former has that really atmospheric synth break while Brandon Flowers is preaching about the devil's water, and Bones brings back the whole Morrissey thing for one last roll around in the sand. So yeah, this is just an exceptional album and arguably The Killer's finest moment. Awesome stuff. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and the gold medal for 2006 is going to go to the dystopian masterpiece that is Black Holes and Revelations by Muse, which was the band's fourth and undoubtedly best album. It's here that Muse throw off the shroud of Radiohead and reveal their inner nerdiness and silliness, leaning into the operatics and flamboyance of Queen. And yeah, it works like an absolute treat, as the band craft a flawless sci-fi flecked banger about corrupt governments, warmongering nations, and ultimately intergalactic space battles. If that sounds like a lot of fun, well, that's because it goddamn is a lot of fun. Make no bones about it, this is a 5-star masterpiece for the ages, with more classic tracks than you can shake the proverbial stick at. And yet the entire record is just highlight after highlight, but phenomenal standouts include the super melodic single Starlight. I just love the way that the final chorus just gets all heavy, it just fucking slaps. Supermassive Black Hole takes Rage Against the Machine style guitars and combines them with skyscraping pop hooks. Invincible sounds like an amazing sentimental 80s ballad fed through modern metal. Exopolitics is just unbelievably catchy and badass with its lyrics of, "When the Zetas fill the skies, it's just our leaders in disguise. Fully loaded satellites will conquer nothing but our minds." Yeah, it just sounds more pertinent than ever before right now. And let's not forget the album closer, Knights of Sidonia, which seems to take the theme tune to Doctor Who and then works it into a science fiction epic with an unforgettable guitar hook, the type of guitar line that just air guitar was created for. So yeah, Muse's Black Holes and Revelations, a pretty easy best pick for 2006 for me. And that's it. That's my list for 2006, but that might not be your list. Please sound off in the comments section and tell me all the records that I've missed. Like, share, subscribe, and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Make sure to check back for my 2007 list, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.
Oh,